let me talk about, well, let's talk about this news out of Dallas this week, shall we?
Yeah.
Horrifying, but completely predictable. A, um, a man climbs onto a rooftop, takes aim at a transport van inside a ICE facility, and opens fire. 3 detainees are hit. One dies right there, apparently, and 2 more are. Are they still fighting for their lives?
They're alive. I don't know what their conditions are, but they're alive.
They were at one point. They were fighting for their lives. The shooter, of course, kills himself, which is usually how these cowards end up going out. And when investigators recover the evidence, they find shell casings marked anti-ice. In other words, this wasn't random. This wasn't a dispute over something that went wrong. This was targeted, deliberate, and ideological. You don't need to be a detective to connect the dots. For years now, the left has treated immigration and customs enforcement as public enemy number one. Politicians, activists, celebrities, all of them have spent an enormous amount of energy convincing their base that ICE agents aren't law enforcement officers enforcing the law, but rather jackbooted fascists running concentration camps. AOC compared border detention facilities to Nazi Germany POW camps. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar have called for ICE to be defunded, dismantled, or just outright abolished. Every time the Democrats repeat that propaganda, they're telling unstable people exactly who the villains are and exactly where to aim their rage. And now in Dallas, somebody has listened. But this shooting isn't some isolated anomaly. It's part of a very clear pattern. The media won't ever admit it, but if you step back, you can see a growing list. In 2017, a left-wing Bernie Sanders supporter opened fire on a baseball field full of Republican lawmakers. He nearly assassinated Steve Scalise. That was politically motivated. In 2019, a leftist militant attacked an ICE detention center in Tacoma, Washington, with firebombs. He literally showed up with Molotov cocktails and a rifle. He wrote a manifesto parroting Antifa talking points and was killed in his own attempt. During the George Floyd riots of 2020, left-wing mobs burned police precincts, assaulted police officers, torched private businesses, and left dozens of people dead in the chaos. More recently, we've seen organized efforts to stalk Supreme Court justices at their homes, with at least one armed man arrested near Brett Kavanaugh's house, ready to kill him. The list goes on, but obviously most recently, the murder of Charlie Kirk by a left-wing radical trans activist. When you start putting all this together, the picture's pretty clear. Violence is being used as a political tool. Violence justified by rhetoric from the highest levels of the Democrat Party. When politicians call ICE agents Nazis, when they say the police are hunting minorities for sport, when they claim conservative Supreme Court justices are illegitimate and destroying democracy, they're telling their supporters that violence is not only acceptable, it's morally required. And then everyone acts surprised when the bullets start flying. Look at what was said after the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade. High-level prominent Democrats told their voters that women would die, that America was being dragged back into the Handmaid's Tale. Chuck Schumer stood outside the Supreme Court and screamed threats at Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Maxine Waters told her followers to confront Trump officials in public, to harass them wherever they go. These aren't slips of the tongue. They're deliberate marching orders, and they work. That message seeps into the minds of the deranged, the violent, those people that are just desperate for a cause. Now, compare what they do to how the media covers supposed right-wing violence. If a guy in a MAGA hat for it jaywalks, it becomes a national headline about the rise of fascism. A garage door pull in a NASCAR garage gets turned into a white nationalist noose because of systemic racism. January 6th is treated like the crime of the century, despite the fact that the vast majority of people there were unarmed, walking through the halls, taking selfies after being invited in. But when ICE agents get firebombed, when Republican congressmen are nearly killed, when Supreme Court justices have armed assassins outside their homes, the media simply memory holes it. They pretend that it's random. They call it mostly peaceful. They downplay or outright excuse it. They protect the narrative that they've created. This is why what happened in Dallas matters so much, because it's proof that the narrative has consequences. Demonize law enforcement long enough, and somebody is going to be willing to pull the trigger. Tell people that ICE is running concentration camps, and eventually someone will treat ICE like Nazis. Scream that democracy is on the verge of collapse because of Republicans, and some lunatic will believe that it's his duty to start shooting Republicans. The violent left isn't an underground movement. It's the direct offspring of mainstream Democratic rhetoric. And the thing is, the Democrats know it. They know the risk. They know their words can push people over the edge. But they keep talking anyway because they need the outrage. They need the constant sense of crisis to keep their coalition together. They need enemies. ICE, Border Patrol, the police, conservatives, Christians, to be able to channel their hatred towards. If a few lives are lost along the way, well, that's just collateral damage in their larger political war. So here we are again, not even 2 weeks later, another attack, another body, another crime that the press will downplay or try to bury because the political alignment of the shooter doesn't fit their script. But the truth to us, the truth is obvious. This country has a left-wing violence problem. It's fueled by the rhetoric of Democrat politicians, and until people are willing to acknowledge that, until there's some accountability for the words that incite these attacks, we're going to keep seeing tragedies like Dallas, like Charlie Kirk, like Steve Scalise. Because violence doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the ideas that we're willing to tolerate, the lies that they're willing to spread, and the hatred that they cultivate. The left's been cultivating this for years, and now the results are here in blood, in broken lives, broken families, and in the growing realization that one side of American politics is willing to burn everything down if it helps them gain or hold on to power. This was Gavin Newsom just earlier this week.
That's happening in the United States of America. Masked men jumping out of unmarked cars, people disappearing, no due process, no oversight, zero accountability, happening in the United States of America today. People ask, well, is authoritarianism, you're being hyperbolic? Bull, we're being hyperbolic. If you're a black and brown community, it's here in this country. And so
that was Gavin Newsom earlier this week, and the very next day, one of his soldiers picks up a rifle and goes to target ICE agents. He screwed up and ended up shooting detainees, immigrants.
Right.
And that's horrific in and of itself. It is a direct result of the rhetoric of the left. The rhetoric of, I talked about it last week. It starts at the top and trickles down. And they still don't get it. They're still out there this week spouting their hateful calls to violence. And this is far from over. Far from over.